Thank you. It's really great to be here and at a different campus and see some different faces. I'd just like to acknowledge that this work was done in conjunction with Jo Lind from the School of Medicine and Morwenna Kirwan, who's from the School of Science and Health. We got together and had a lot of fun with this, just trying to work out some good ways to use blended learning in our teaching. And so Jo's actually presented this, she presented it at one of those quick sessions at the Design for Learning Forum, but speed dating, but she said only 10 people could come and see it, so I took a risk and thought I'd present this and kind of mush it together with a different presentation I did in Singapore last year, so hopefully you'll find that interesting. So, as I said, we're from the School of Medicine, and this blended learning project we did was with Year 1 students because they had iPads and they were busy studying nutrition and metabolism at the time, at the beginning of the year. So the aim for Jo, who's the coordinator of Year 1, was to revamp a prac that we were doing that was really, the students were really disinterested in, where they had to do a food diary for a week and then plug it into a database, and then that was the end of the prac. And they found it extremely boring, and the food diary, the food database they were using was really old. It didn't have most of the ethnic foods that students enjoyed eating, like kebabs or falafel or things like that, you know, or sushi. So it was really frustrating as well. As well as just talking about energy in, we also wanted to talk about energy out, so we included a bit of exercise into the prac. And we also wanted to make sure they were integrating all that stuff with the molecular biology and the biochemistry and physiology that they were learning in the lectures as well. But my part in it is this blue box, is I wanted to see how do we implement effective and engaging blended learning into a practical session. So it was a little bit about testing out a whole lot of ideas and seeing how they went. So these are the learning materials that we had. We had the students, obviously. There was some paper and pen components, you know, face-to-face sessions. They had to have access to a mobile device, or we made sure that it was platform-friendly across laptops and PCs as well. The app that we chose was MyFitnessPal. The students also used Google Docs and Go Soapbox for some discussion groups. So the first part of the practical, the students did a face-to-face kind of fun exercise, jumping around kind of component, just getting them used to the idea of energy output and how that relates to heart rate and so on. It was quite interesting. We had Jana Pittman as part of that, and I think she was quite intimidating to some of the students who had to do jump squats. Her group did the most jump squats out of the whole cohort. So they had to complete a quiz, just linking their biochemistry knowledge, and then they also just tested on calories. So it's sort of an example of the output that they created, and an example of one of the quiz questions. So after they'd had that sort of introduction, it was a really fun prac introduction. We got them to go home and do some what we call lifestyle monitoring. And this is where Morwenna Kirwan comes in, because she's from the School of Health and Science, is quite the expert on health intervention apps. So apps that can measure different health inputs. And in her work, she's discovered that they can make a significant change to patients' outcomes. For example, measuring their blood glucose on an app, or measuring their calories on an app, or exercise, as to how well they actually follow those intervention, you know, basically how well they follow the advice that's given to them by their doctor. So if they monitor something daily and they can see the progress and see it charted, it really improves their outcomes. So we were really interested in this idea of this sort of new world of health intervention apps and how it could be applied to our students. And we thought, what is a better way for them to apply their own advice that they might be giving to patients one day to their own lives? So for 3 days, we asked them to record their food and their exercise and also their sleep, so they could sort of see what it feels like to actually monitor those things closely, the way that you might ask a patient to do that. Just for ease of use, we use MyFitnessPal. It's a app that I'm familiar with and I could show Joe how to use. So I'll just show you an example. This is my food diary from Wednesday last week. I was doing really well until I started snacking on the chocolate chip cookies that I made. But anyway. No. So it's really easy to use. If you want to add a food, the students just use whatever. Well, sorry, I haven't used this version on my iPad before, so usually you can use it on a phone, but they can scan a barcode. So if you're eating a snack food, you just scan the barcode and it will the database is amazing. Pretty much everything I've scanned has been in there, so a muesli bar or whatever. Also, if you eat foods like banana chocolate chip muffins or whatever, often it'll be at the top of your snack list. So it's a really easy app to use. You can also input your calories if you've been doing exercise. And it's also linked to various exercise apps. So if you do happen to use something like Runkeeper and go for a run and it measures your calories, it will link to that and deduct it from your calorie allowance, which is kind of handy. So back to the talk. So we got them to do that. We also asked them to record their sleep patterns. There's an app that does that, but we also said just record it on paper if you prefer. So this is a more example of the outputs you get from MyFitnessPal. You can do like a weekly breakdown. So once they had done that, we got them to come back and fill in an online survey, and we used Google Forms for that. The reason we use Google Forms is that it's kind of like a live spreadsheet, so everybody can contribute to the one spreadsheet. And then very quickly we get results from that, and it also summarises them in a picture form. So, sorry. I can't actually show you the summary of the pictures, but this is just to show you the form, how easy it was for the students to just fill in a survey based on the things that they've been doing for the last week. Oh, sorry, this is a different survey that I created about iPad use, not the one for the prac. So the sort of questions we asked them was about their gender, their height, their weight, their basal metabolic rate, which they can calculate using calculation technology that they used. We were curious to see if they actually followed the advice that we gave them. It was all optional because we can't guarantee everyone's got access to the same technology. We're still not completely confident that every student had an iPad or every student was comfortable using computers, so they could do it by pen and paper. We're curious to see what they would do. We asked them to measure their energy intake and expenditure, the types of exercise and their sleep patterns. And this is how they actually ended up recording their results. 44% of them did use their iPad, 6% used another tablet device, 38% used their smartphone, which is great, 9% used the computer, and only 3% used pen and paper. So for us, this is really encouraging as our first really targeted blended learning, attempt, where we really pushed the whole idea that everybody pretty much was able to engage in the prac the way that we'd hoped they would. But they didn't all use their iPad, even though pretty much everybody in the School of Medicine first year did get an iPad at the start of the year. This is just an example of the survey output that they got in Google Docs. They did agree that the lifestyle monitoring had been helpful and that they would recommend it to a patient. On average, they did. So once they had looked at their online survey and they were in a prac room, in a lecture room together, we put them into groups and we asked them to discuss just one of the questions that we had in the discussion forum. So they were assigned a discussion question for each of their groups, and we asked just one person to be the scribe. So they, as a group, looked at the question. They could all see the question, but just one person input the answers for the group, so that when at the end of the session, the student could get up and talk about the talk to the rest of the class about the things that they've been talking about. So not every group had to do the same question. They could have more of a big discussion. And just quickly, that's some of the sorts of answers that they created for the first question, which was barriers to recording health data. I like that one. I didn't eat food because I didn't want to log it. Okay. So that was the end of the practical. So basically, in summary, for this really targeted blended learning where we used lots of different applications, an app, the Go Soapbox app, Google Drive, the students really did enjoy using all those different things, and I think it was a successful attempt at blended learning. They did use their mobile devices. And basically, this is a survey I did about their general use of iPads. And although when we weren't doing targeted, this is across the whole year, when we weren't doing just a targeted practical, most of what they used their iPads was for PDF viewing and annotation or looking at Blackboard. When we did use the significant blended learning strategy, the students were really engaged and they really enjoyed it and they were really satisfied with it. So I'll stop now because I've run out of time.